are listening to Arts on the Air, a bi-weekly-ish interview show dedicated to Savannah, Georgia's artists, musicians, and authors. Each episode will feature a guest in conversation about their philosophy, practice, and current projects, as well as their thoughts on the state of the arts in our community. Our theme music is a clip by Jose Ray, made specifically for this show. Hello all, this is Kate Stanton Melendez, and this week I had the pleasure of sitting down with Lee, the owner of Neighborhood Comics. Neighborhood Comics is an indie shop. It's downtown Savannah's comic book specialty store. Open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Neighborhood Comics is located just steps from Forsyth Park at 1205 Bull Street. They offer a full line of new comic books and graphic novels, as well as extensive back issues and key books. You can also find toys, statues, collectibles, and books for young readers. New comics and graphic novels are restocked every Wednesday. If you've ever wondered what goes into producing sequential art, this is the place to be. Since 2021, Lee and Neighborhood Comics have had a dedicated artist in residence program. Select artists have been on-site creating sequential art in some form, comics, storybooks, layouts, etc., for a minimum of 3 days a week, totaling 10 hours or more, open in 1 month blocks. You can find a list of past, present, and future artists on their website and apply to participate. They have openings starting July 2027. Join Neighborhood Comics next door at White Whale Craft Ales on the 1st, 3rd, and 5th Wednesdays of every month from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. for a neighborhood drink and draw. It's a free community event for comics and artists of all ages to work on projects, draw in a relaxed setting, and make some new friends. Neighborhood Comics also holds book and zine clubs, book signings, and holds an annual SAVAGE FST, a cultural exhibition each fall. Why don't you introduce yourself, sir?
Hi, my name is Lee Heidel. Do you need me to spell anything to you for TV? I always have to do that. Hi, my name is Lee Heidel. I'm the managing partner at Neighborhood Comics in Savannah, Georgia. We are located at 1205 Bull Street, just 2 blocks away from beautiful Forsyth Park. Highly encouraged to bring the kiddos out to the farmers market on Saturday. Pop over and see us afterward. Our neighbors are Alexander's Bistro to the north of us, and to the south of us, we've got White Whale Craft Ales. And for you longtime Savannians, we are across the street from the old Sears building. That will mean something to you.
It was a Sears building?
That big, ugly building across the street was a Sears.
Is there anything in it now? No, right?
No. It's like they're using it for the parking lot, they're using for staging for films. And from what I understand, the owner of it lives in Texas or someplace, and it's like an investment property that they're just waiting for the right person to pay the right amount of money for to then become probably demolished and have something else built there. Let's be honest. I don't think it's a contributing structure to the historic nature of the neighborhood. I may be wrong. Who knows?
You know, you're a contributing structure to the neighborhood. How long has Neighborhood been here?
That's really sweet. 7 years, not as long as the Sears building. So, yeah, we've been here for our 7th anniversary was in May, so we just passed that, and we love being here. This is the Victorian district, this part of town. We're really close to Thomas Square streetcar district. I love our neighbors. I love the fact that we're on this side of the park. I love the fact that people can find parking and can come in. And if you're parking on those east-west streets, the parking is free and unmetered. So, go crazy for that. But it's nice to be in a part of town where people walk, where people have families, where there are young people that are pursuing arts in all different kinds of way. We talk a lot about the Starland District as it's known, and that's definitely a great hub, and that's a great anchor to that end of Bull Street. And it's been really fun to see things move further north down the street and be more in our neck of the woods too. So Savannah, obviously, amazing reputation as an art city, as a cultural destination. But what a lot of people maybe don't think of is they think of just the fine arts aspect of it and not the design or application or illustrative side of it as well. And Savannah has a huge population of people who make comic books. And that's everything from the folks who do it in their spare time and self-publish mini comics and zines to, express themselves, to tell stories, to do nonfiction work, all the way through people who work for DC, Marvel, Disney, all the big players that you might think about in comic books. So it's a really interesting, thriving, diverse scene of folks. Not everybody looks the same, not everybody's the same age, but they all appreciate it as an art form and a communication form. So that's been really exciting for us and the store to try to be a cultivator of that, but more than that, a supporter of that, making sure that those folks know that what they're doing makes a difference, that we have a community that wants to support them, that appreciates what they're doing, and is very curious about what that process is. How does it work? How do comics get made? And that's part of what we do with the Artist in Residence program, supporting the neighborhood drink and draw, which happens right next door. The SAVAGE Fest in October. We just did a convention at Ships of the Sea called Comic Currents, and the ability to have a space where we have readings, where we have signings, where we have ways that people can meet face to face and talk to creators. I think that's really been a real gift of having this physical space.
Your artist residency has been several years. I mean, you've got a lot of experience. It's 1 month gaps, right?
Yeah.
And so everybody's local?
Yeah, well, for the most part, we've had a couple of people from out of town. So the Artist in Residence program, its origin story is silly, but I will recount it for you. But, when we first opened, I was in the store all the time. And I needed to make sure we had our processes. I needed to talk to the people that came in, because for me, it was really important that it actually serve the neighborhood and not just be what I would have wanted as a personal kind of comic shop experience. That definitely influenced it a little bit, but I found out really quickly that the inclinations of our locals were a little specialized, esoteric, more focused on the art than perhaps the name brand sort of thing. But one of those early weeks, we had a family come in, visiting family out of town, here on vacation. And the parent came in with the kids, and almost immediately the parent said, "Oh, this isn't an antique store at all." She didn't know comics were still made. That was really I didn't know they still made comic books. She thought that she was coming to share with her children a trip down memory lane, which we have. Like, that is a part of, the 100 years of developing comics in this country. But it was right then and there that my heart just sinks. We've invested all this time, all this money, all this emotional resources, and somebody with kids in middle school did not realize that comics were still being produced. So that was extremely heartbreaking. And right then and there, I was like, we have to do something about this, because we do have such a great local scene. And I didn't even realize at that time how big it was. But the Artist in Residence program came out of that experience, where I compare it to when you go down to River Street and they're pulling taffy in the windows. And for years, our Artist in Residence sat in the front window, and they were pulling taffy every day, so that when people walked by and saw them drawing in the window, it was much more likely for them to come in and ask questions. And once you have that's Ace, that's our Artist in Residence this month.
Artist in Residence. Hi, sorry, I will move my laptop.
So that idea that people could not only be here on vacation, because that's kind of what was in my initial, because of that interaction, but that people can come into the store and have a personal connection to somebody who makes comic books. So it is fresh in their mind that it is an active, thriving arts community that is beyond what you see in the Marvel movies on the big screen. That's definitely an important part of it, but that's not all it is. And if you think that's all it is, then you're really missing out on some really, really interesting, exciting storytelling, diverse voices, people that have, for a lot of them, have been marginalized. And this is a really accessible way for them to start telling their own stories. You don't have to have a huge platform or a media company behind you to get started. And you can find your audience, whether it's online, if it's being in indie stores like ours, you can start to build that. The big benefits for the artists that I saw were, number one, a lot of artists are very solitary. they work by themselves, especially comic artists where your writer may live in one town, the artist lives someplace else. You've got a different person doing the letters, a different person doing the colors. And so all these people are spread out working professionally. And when you're starting out, you're doing a lot of that stuff yourself, A to Z. So how do you get comfortable talking about your artwork? If you are lucky enough to go to school at SCAD, they have programs. They work with you. They try to get you out of your comfort zone to be able to have those skills. But if you don't do that, or if it doesn't come as easily to you, this puts you in a position where you are essentially tabling at an artist alley at a comic convention every day that you show up to the store. People are going to ask you questions. You're going to engage with them. You're going to try to make any kind of a connection because that's what we do as people. We find community. We try to build these stories between each other. And so that's what the Artist in Residence program gets to do. So they practice those tabling skills. They have a studio outside of their home or outside of the school experience, if that's where they are, that they can create comics in a hopefully stimulating environment, a place that they can use as a reference library, as a place to go and find tools to help them with the stories that they're telling. How did this artist draw a horse, for example? What was the perspective? Like, how did they pace this story? They can go and actually grab that and it can influence their work. The artists also keep 100% of the money they make throughout the month. So whether they are here tabling or not, we have records that we keep, and at the end of the month, we cash them out. And so that's another incentive. It's hopefully not the primary one, but it is just a way for us to show our appreciation that we're glad that they're here and we're glad that they wanted to participate in the program. We've been doing the program for 5 years, and our first ones really came right as people were coming back to retail after the pandemic. So when I look at all those old pictures, and everybody's wearing their masks still and all of that. But we are approaching like our 60th artist in residence at this point.
That's so cool. And it looks like you're booked out for like part of 2027.
Halfway through 2027.
So cool. Do you apply? Is it an invite only?
It's apply. Yeah, no, it's 100% application based. It's on our website. Go to the About menu, Artist in Residence. There's a form you fill out right there. It goes into a queue, and we work with you to find something that hopefully fits your schedule. While most of the people who participate in the program are local, because we don't have a travel stipend or anything like that we offer as a part of it, we have had people travel to be a part of it, which makes us feel really good that there are people who have come from Boston and Florida to be a part of the program when it was more of a hardship perhaps to come in and do it, but they wanted to participate, and that really meant a lot.
For sure. They're living out of a hotel room for a month to be able to hang out with you.
Sleeping on the floor or a couch or wherever they can get in. Yeah.
Or renting a place.
Oh, this is Ace. Yeah, so I think that covered the Artist in Residence program. I mean, it's been really fun for us. I feel like it sets us apart from a lot of other, commercial storefront institutions to put, 4 to 8 feet of real estate that could be merchandised with stuff we make money on, to instead let that be something that ties people closer to the art form, to storytelling, to the people who make it. And so it's kind of a no-brainer, honestly. It just made so much sense. So I've been very happy with that program.
I think that's just the coolest thing ever. And I mean, we always talk about some of the other artist in residence programs, but I think you guys get hidden a little bit because you're such a niche market. I think that's just so cool that it's gone on for so long. Yeah,
and I wish it was a situation where we could offer more to the artists that are coming. And I think that is why, rightfully, some of the other artist in residence programs do have higher profiles, because there is lodging provided, or again, some stipend or a grant to help fund some of that. And that's definitely, we've looked at those things and we've tried some different fundraising opportunities for it. We just haven't hit the right thing yet to make it sustainable. But that's definitely still on the radar for something that I would love to make available to people in the future.
Very cool. And you've got a draw night at White Whale next door every month?
Yeah.
Or most months?
Yeah, well, the first and third, and if there is one fifth Wednesdays a month, will happen right next door at White Whale. From 6 to 10 p.m., it is an open drink and draw. I'm always very quick to say you do not have to drink. They do have non-alcoholic beverages there. And I highly suggest you tip your bartender as if you were drinking, because they are working. And for a lot of people who are perhaps younger or don't come from a bar culture, that's an easy thing to miss. So I always try to just kind of interject, they're working, and that's a big part of how they get paid. So they've got the lights on and the doors are open, and so we need to take care of our people. But apart from that, it is predominantly comic artists that come. Illustrators of all different sorts. Actually, we've had animators come in and set up their whole rig and work on their animation projects. We've had game designers come in and do the exact same thing, be working on programming games at the same time as people are sketching in their sketchbooks, are working on full page panels that they have for either paid projects or for school or for personal work. And it's a really low stress environment to come in, and because everybody is doing something, you're not going to feel like you're interrupting some other group in their conversation. It's really easy just to say, hey, what are you working on? And to take a look at their sketchbook or their project and have some kind words and then reciprocate. Oh, that's cool. That's kind of what I'm doing. And there have been some really interesting collaborations that have formed from that, people expanding their circles. And I think especially as if you are a student, making connections with people that are already professionals, or, just at a starting point. If you have aspirations of being professional, even letting the self-published work sponsor more of your life and be, a bigger part of how you're able to make money, making those personal connections is huge. Everybody I know who has a job in comics has that job because someone referred them. It is a very much a small world when you get into it, and just having that camaraderie to be like, oh, your friend is offered a job, they can't take it because good for them, they're too busy, or maybe they think they're really not the right fit for it and it wouldn't be a good partnership, but they can say, oh, I know this person and I've seen their work and they're super nice and easy to work with. And that's how you get your foot in the door. That's how you move up the ladder to be the person to reach down and pull up the next person. And it's been so wonderful to see that, the collaborations that have come out of that, the friendships that have come out of that, the small businesses that have come out of that. People have really found different ways to support themselves, support their friends, support the community over discussions around sketchbooks. So it's been really, really exciting to see. And I think it's important about that to say, when you walk by, it might look like it skews a little young, especially in the main school year, but that it's open to everyone. It's not a student thing. It's not a locals thing. It's a very interesting mix of folks. And if you're worried about that side of it, you're really missing out on some interesting work and interesting conversations. And I think that, again, that introspective personal nature that a lot of artists have where they're working by themselves so often, it can be hard to get out of your bubble, but it is a very much a friendly place to do that. So
very cool. Now, do you draw comics?
Well, I would love to say yes, but no. I went to school for fine arts education. So I was a high school teacher and an elementary school teacher, and I used comics a lot in my curriculum. And I felt like it was just extremely important to capture and motivate those students who were the ones who were saying, oh, well, I can't draw like that, or I can't do this. The ones that would really have some self-confidence concerns about sharing more traditional fine art forms, even at those young ages, but introducing the storytelling element of it and the progression of a story or an idea, or if you're doing nonfiction, steps of a process that you're illustrating, that really changes the dynamic and it changes what they think that they're capable of. And so I loved that aspect of it. And that was always a big part of what I taught. I grew up, of course, loving comics and really, really fell in love with them in college. I had some really interesting colleagues and local stores that were able to feed that for me. And when the opportunity came to do something like this, I absolutely jumped on it because I missed having those kinds of connections.
Very, very cool. Can you teach me something about comic book art that most people wouldn't know?
Oh, interesting. Well, I think that by saying most people, we're probably going to run up into different things. I think a lot of people don't think about the division of labor that goes into it. So for most comic books that say are coming out on a monthly schedule, so that's a single issue, ongoing or limited edition series. That's what most people associate with a traditional stapled 22-page comic book that you would pick up. Your traditional superhero books, for example, are part of that world. That it would be completely impossible for one person to do all of the work that's involved with making that every month come out. And so for most artists, people that are credited as artists, they may only do pencil sketches for the book. The layouts, the roughs, the poses, the graphic design kind of elements for it, if you will. Whereas a second artist would be the inker, who comes over and traces over those lines, makes them defined, adds additional detail and texture as a part of what they do. A colorist who comes in and does the digital coloring. At this point, everything's pretty much digital unless it's a painted book or it's more of an artisan piece. The coloring, a different artist does the lettering, comes in and actually does, that's a specialty skill to be able to do lettering physically or digitally, to put that all in. And one of the jobs that I think is really, really overlooked is the role of the editor in these books. Because if you think about an editor for a traditional prose book, you're offering feedback, and of course there's grammatical and there are all these other pieces, but editors in comics are the team leader. They're the people who connect all these different talents together. They lead the story group, and depending on if it's part of a wider comic book series or something like that, they're the kind of keepers of the Bible of what we need to do and how do we keep this going on track. Everybody's on time, everybody's doing their share of the labor. And there are creative elements to that too, but sequential monthly work does not happen without really good editors. And I will say, Savannah also has really good editors who live here, who work for DC Comics and are interning at Marvel right now and are, that is their job. And they perhaps went to school or had training to be the artist or to be the writer, but have found that those skills that they learned and they honed means that they can talk the language, they can be in the room, they can coordinate the people, and they can actually make the things happen.
Very, very cool. All right. In this room, how much is like a local work versus national work?
Yeah, for sure. So in the store at any given time, we probably have 60,000 books.
Whoa.
Yeah. Comic books are pretty small. And
Fair.
so we do have cabinets over here that are just loaded for back issues, older books, people who may be searching for a particular series or issues. And then we have a second location on Duran. And then that store, including what's warehoused there, is well over 150,000 books.
Whoa.
And so what's in the store right now, we have a couple of sections that are very much tailored to local creators or self-published creators as a part of that as well. So we have a mini comics and zines wall. 80% of that is local. Cool. The ones that aren't are going to be ones that we usually have some sort of personal connection with. So books that we know who maybe have done the conventions that we've put together or have some sort of relationship with the store or with me or someone who works here. And we've fostered that connection. We also, because we have so many people who work for major publishers here, we always do a lot of signings. So we also have a huge collection of signed books. You're sitting right next to We Are Pan, which is written by Andre Fertino that just came out. Andre is a really seasoned comics writer that, especially when it comes to nonfiction work, he's a great researcher. And so that book is about Cuba and about the Peter Pan operation there. So he has a really interesting kind of niche interest in some of these historical things that haven't really been explored in popular culture in a way, and works with really great artists who are typically come from those cultures, from those places, to help with the storytelling aspect of it and to make sure that he's got a culturally relevant voice as a part of it as well. So he's fantastic. We'll be doing a signing for that later in the summer. So
very, very cool. Oh my goodness. I mean, some of these, it's not what I thought of as a kid for
Sure.
comic books, right?
Of course.
There's so much here that's not like the traditional superhero that I kind of remember.
And we are in the section of the store that we're between horror, nonfiction, and weird. So
Yeah,
I literally
like
have a sign that says weird. And what that really means is really, interesting, more experimental, creator-owned storytelling. Standalone books that are a little bit more out there. Starting with the stuff from the 1960s, San Francisco comics with an X artists like your R. Crumbs and folks like that, all the way through people now like Simon Hanselman or, the artists that are kind of pushing a lot of these boundaries and buttons of what are comic books, what is graphic art, what is graphic storytelling, and what will that mean for a different future looking at those same kind of things. So
What do you sell most of? Possible.
Yeah, well, it's when you look at there's two things. There's quantity and then there's dollar amounts. So
both.
Yeah, so with quantity, it really is single issue traditional comic books. New comics come out every Wednesday. So every Wednesday there's a drop of somewhere between 70 to 100 new titles that we carry. There are far more than that, but that's about what we will put on the shelf on a Wednesday. And that's not total, that's the issue count is far higher. Those are 70 to 100 different titles on the books, or specialty variants of the books. And so that's going to be our biggest in quantity, for sure. Most new comics now range between $4 to $5, which when you think about inflation, far outpaces. I grew up with 75 cent to $1.25 books. My grandparents were paying a dime. My parents were paying 15 to 20 cents. So now we're at $5. It's
still, come on, that's so reasonable compared to other art forms.
Sure, and I think that's the right way to look at it. It is that unique combination of art and literature. It's somewhere between reading a prose book and watching a movie. It shows you what the characters look like, what the environments look like, but is letting your mind still kind of use that creativity to fill in the blanks of what happens between the panels. So there is definitely, when you hear oh man, it's $5 and I read it in 5 minutes, I'm like, you're reading it wrong.
Yeah, that's not the right way to approach any art form, friend.
Yeah, you got the story, now you go back through it again and you see how they told the story. You read the bubbles, you didn't experience the story. So I think that's always interesting when people are coming to it or looking at it that way. It's just a different way to kind of think about it. In terms of pricing, obviously collected editions are more expensive. Comics in general are priced by the number of pages of the book.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So if you think about it, like an artist gets a page rate. You get paid by how many pages.
I mean, that's how paintings work too. It's a square inch by square inch ratio typically. Sure. Okay.
Correct. And so sometimes it doesn't even matter if it's hardcover or softcover or what kind of extra adornment that the book may have to make it more special. Ultimately, the more pages that you're buying, the more it costs. So we have every thing from those collected editions where you can get 50 issues of classic Spider-Man all in one run, so you can see how Steve Ditko and his art progressed through those 50 issues with Stan Lee writing it. Or you can pick up something that is more creator modern focus, that is 100 pages of a sword and sorcery book that's also really funny. But once that comes out and it finds a fan base, then they make a hardcover version of it. It's kind of the opposite of books where you go from hardcover to softcover. It's usually the other way around.
That's how you know you made it when you get it. All right.
And honestly, for payment structures for artists, a lot of it is work for hire, especially if you are doing property that you don't own. Like if you're working on Batman, you don't own Batman. I'm so sorry. I wish you did. But if your book goes back for a second printing, if it gets collected in these different ways, then you do get bonuses because it shows that it's popular. So that's an incentive that goes along with that. But the other great thing from the fine art standpoint is artists almost always get to keep their original work. So that is, if you are working traditionally and you've done a traditional comic art, even though it's republished at roughly 7 by 10 inches, The original art is 11 by 17. That's how they can fit so much detail into the pages.
Okay.
And then it gets shrunk down. And so those 11 by 17 pages will be theirs that they can take to a convention or post online. And if you're lucky enough to draw Batman, you're getting thousands of dollars for this original page on top of what your page rate was to do the work. So there are things like that come into play. And so while you necessarily aren't getting a huge pay rate to do Batman, you would think you would. There's ancillary money to be made as a part of that as well.
Very cool.
And commissions, just like with fine artists, once you have a name for yourself, you're able to, open commissions and do original works for people and supplement that way. So you really, for the most part, have to have a name to command those higher dollars, but there's a path for that.
That's very cool. What's like the most expensive thing you've ever sold?
Oh, goodness. So we've had a couple of pretty high-end single issue comics. The first appearance of Wolverine, which is a very popular Marvel character, which was in an Incredible Hulk book, which makes it a little weirder. And so we had a relatively high graded version of that. So comics, they're paper. And over time, paper degrades. It has issues. When we talk about vintage comics, especially ones from the 40s or the 30s to the 70s, there was not really a collector market. So they were the things that kids folded up and put in their back pockets. They buried them in the woods when their mom didn't want them reading them anymore and would go dig them back out. So for a lot of those titles, they can be very, very difficult to find high quality examples of them. And not even the publishers were keeping copies. They would throw them out. They were scrap. They were pulp. And so because that was a finite resource, collectors now who love this stuff invest in those original printings as if they were fine art, that sort of thing, because limited pool, pop culture significance, personal significance. And so we sold that first appearance of Wolverine, that was in the $7,000 range, something like that, for that copy that we had.
The paper quality was also really bad.
It's garbage. Yeah, it's newsprint. I mean, and when we go even earlier, I mean, the Silver Age stuff, they didn't have any coatings on the covers. It was basically slightly different than the interior. It was white pulp instead of the off-white pulp. But yeah, there was no idea that you should keep this nice. And the very early stuff, Superman, Batman, that predates World War II, where you had paper drives, and every good responsible young person took their paper to the paper drives. And so that's even fewer of those golden age books is what that's kind of considered. And so, yeah, it's the history of comics is very much like the history of our country. It's like the history of baseball. It's like the history of jazz. It's one of those three things that I feel like, not that other cultures didn't have sequential storytelling, but the format that we think of as comic books is really just follows along with the last 100 years of our country for the better and for the worse. It's tracked right along with it. Yeah, for sure.
Very cool. How does grading work?
Grading is a system in which you take your books, you can mail them in or you can hand deliver them. There are a few grading agencies that have the clout that you would want to invest in to use, because if it's a non-reputable company, the grade doesn't really mean very much. So for the big one is CGC, Collectible Guarantee Company. They're based out of Florida. And you can, again, mail in, etc., your book there. They have professionals who go through and evaluate it. They give it the white glove test. They look at it under UV lights. They make sure that no restoration has been done. That used to be a big business. People with colored pencils touching these guys up. Now you can see it under the lights. That they've gone through, they've certified that it's original. They evaluate the condition of the cover and the interior pages to make sure that everything is consistent, and they assigned it a numerical grade between NG, which is no grade. Those are pretty rough, you might imagine. Not complete, perhaps half the cover is missing, something like that. But then it starts at 0.5 and goes all the way up to 10, which is a perfect. There are a very limited number of 10 books. You can, if it is brand new, right off the shelf, never had a problem in shipping, nobody else touched it, your best grade you can expect is a 9.8.
Wow.
They really do reserve those 10s for things that have no noticeable wear, and oftentimes those are books that don't have paper covers. They may have a metal cover, or may have a leather cover, or may have, they exist.
Wait, that's cool.
It is. They're very expensive.
I would imagine.
And we've had some of that. There are you probably like things like collectible plates in the 80s, like the New Zealand Mint. They will do comic book recreations, and so we have had those in the past that have been like point whatever silver, and those regularly get 10.0 grades because they are always kept in the way that they were originally packaged and presented, layer of box around layer of box, and then you have it in a little plastic thing. Once the book is graded, it's encased in plastic and nobody can ever read it again because that grade is then affixed to it, whereas if you could open it up, you could damage it. Then it's no longer that grade. I personally don't grade books. We will occasionally offer that as a service to customers where we'll package everything together, make sure it's taken responsibly to the grading company and back. But I also am not interested in telling somebody how to enjoy what they enjoy. If seeing that with a 9.4 on it makes them happy, that's great. That is great. I hope that you read it first, but if you didn't, maybe you can buy it in a cheaper version and enjoy a reproduction of it that you enjoyed the story to, or whenever there's anything that's also could be a collectible, whether it's trading cards, any of this kind of pop culture stuff that we have, it does change the purpose of it, the intent, when it gets packaged that way. And the collector community is really strong, and I don't mean to disparage it, because we definitely have people come in digging for gold, trying to find those things in the high quality that they want to appreciate that way. And that's fine. I would have a very hard, we had a Hulk #1 one time, and it was falling apart. It had been pressed into a cheap 8.5 by 11 document frame that was like plastic, not even glass. And he had kept it on his desk at work for 30 years looking at it. And then he brought it here to have it appraised, and he's taking it out of the frame because I refused to. I could see how dry this book was, and it was falling like snow. The pages, or the paper, was just disintegrating in his hands. That's a case where grading would be a great idea, because no one's going to read that book. No one is ever going to touch that book again. That is something you just send off and you hope for the best. And it will be a piece of history that is encapsulated, that is not going to further deteriorate. I understand that 100%. But something brand new that comes off the rack that 1,000 other people are sending in that are all going to be 9.8s, that's not, it's just playing a kind of a game. You're gambling a little bit. Also, whatever.
What I'm hearing is buy two.
Yeah. No, I would love to be that guy, but no.
I said it, you didn't.
Be within your means. This should be enjoyable. This is not your 401k plan. This is not going to put your kids through college. Don't look at it that way. Please don't. Instead, look at it as, I'm collecting this thing, I'm buying this thing because looking at it makes me happy. Or I enjoy the stories, and I want to keep up with the stories, just like you would watching a TV show every week. It's the exact same process, that serialized storytelling, collecting these little bits and bobs. And then if you really like it, a really common path for people is they buy the single issues when they come out. Then when the collected edition comes out, they buy that. Then when the deluxe edition comes out, they buy that. And then when the prestige format comes out, they buy that. And very often, they don't keep all of them. They give the single issues away to a friend or a younger reader. Then they give the paperback away to somebody else. And then they have the nicest version of the thing. And so for a lot of readers and supporters, that's a typical path. So that's also fun to see. And we have people who come in all the time who will buy 2 or 3 copies of a $20 collection of 200-page books, something like that, because they know they're going to give them away. They've read it, and they gave away their last copies. They're just going to buy 3 this time because they're going to give it away again, and they might like to still have 1 for themselves. And that's really beautiful. I love to see things like that, where people are buying a classic book or a book that means something to them personally and are just passing it along. I mean, obviously this is what I love and I'm invested in, but kids who come to our house on Halloween get comic books.
Cool.
I mean, they get a stack of comic books. And, the cynical part of it is, I know where you can get more, kids. But it's also, there's something really nice about seeing the face light up and be like, whoa, I didn't expect this. This is cool.
That would be amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So I love candy too, though. Don't get me started. I'm not saying that's wrong at all. That's a really important part of Halloween. I'm not here to harsh that.
No, you're just the coolest house that has like the different stuff.
If you make it down to the end of the street, you might as well get a big pile of comic books.
That's too cool. All right. What do you want to talk about that we haven't talked about yet?
I think that it's really interesting demographically who we serve and who can find a place at the store. Whether that is for community or if it's for self-satisfaction, whatever that may be. We had an older couple who lived in walkable, to the store when we first opened, that would come in and buy Archie comics, just like they did when they were kids.
Aww.
It was the sweetest thing. We have a lot of generational youth, so you've got parents who are sharing with their kids what they grew up with and what they liked. You've got people that are at really interesting crossroads of their lives, people that are becoming young adults, people that are maybe transitioning to a different status in life, that comics can serve a really interesting touchstone where you can either have some escapism or you could actually have some reassurance about what you're doing, what you're looking forward to, what you may be trying to change in your own life. It's such a diverse selection of work. The store really came about when my daughter was 4 or 5 and she started getting into comics. And I was very far removed from it. I had moved on. I was doing other professional work. I wasn't even teaching then. I was working strictly in design and development and always appreciated it and would collect pieces or that sort of thing, but it wasn't a part of my everyday life. And she, like I did, I discovered comics kind of through cartoons as a kid. I grew up in a small town. There wasn't a comic book store. I watched the Super Friends and Scooby-Doo and stuff like that. And then when I found out there were these other stories that I'd never heard before, and I could find them at the drugstore or at the grocery store if I beat the one other kid in town who also read comic books to the store. So I could never get them in order. I would have one and would never know how that story ended. And I wasn't a big collector. As a kid, I probably had 10 books. But I
have an
loved.
anecdote that's about this.
Yeah.
My dad was really, really into comics.
Yeah.
He has a huge comic book tub. And when I was a little kid, he gave me his giant book tub of comics to go through. And the worst cliffhanger that I was ever left on was during the Marauders arc of the Morlocks, where they're going through and slaughtering everybody in the tunnels. And Warren Worthington was my favorite character.
Yeah.
And I never found out what happened if they took his wings away. I never found out.
I love when we get issues that were mailed originally. Those are so fun.
Why? What's the difference?
You could do mail order. So sometimes they'd be different covers, which is interesting, or there'd be other different marks, or when people would actually keep the paper envelopes that they came in. I don't know. It's just all kind of part of the story. There were fan clubs, and so you would have fan club special stuff, and the renewal letters. They're all just so that ephemera of the age. Everything was about paper. There was no email newsletter going out, so they were a dedicated audience. So you got all this fun stuff in the mail as a part of that. But yeah, so growing up not having that kind of access to comics and seeing my kid be really excited and it being something that we could do together. And at that time, there wasn't a spot that really catered to new readers of comics. They kind of just expected you to come in and know what you wanted and be okay with how it was set up, how it was running, and to fit to that system, as opposed to being something that was a little bit more choose your own adventure. Can we, how do we engage with a space that's new and foreign to us if we didn't come from that world? So I was totally comfortable. I know how to navigate a comic book store. I was finding what I wanted. But she didn't have that same experience. Her experience was one where she did not feel that it was for her.
Aww.
And so that was really rough. And I talked to a couple of other dads, who all had kids we all had girls about the same age. Not that that's the biggest part of the story, but we all had kids who were interested in this, and there were things that we wanted to share with them, but we found that they were hitting roadblocks in being able to do that. And that's where the idea for the store came from, was, well, how do we, because when we would travel, we would go and we would see stores that had big windows and that light came in and that you could navigate through it without the fear of knocking something over. And after being a retailer, I understand how that happens. Like, you get a ton of product every month and you've got to figure out how to move it. There are lots of different things that are a part of that. But the idea of not being per se a kid's store, while we do have a large middle grades, early readers, we have all that right up front because we want to make sure with low displays so they can reach things, they can get them themselves. They don't have to ask mom and dad for help. They can engage directly with the books that are appropriate for them and are fun starting points. But to not use that term all ages, which I feel like doesn't necessarily work, but for new readers, people that are new to the idea of picking up. They listened to NPR and there was a story about this, book called Sabrina that was the first comic to win a Pulitzer. And they're like, oh, well, like, what is this? Like, this sounds interesting. So you go and you grab it and you talk to them about it. And they're like, well, I'll give this a shot. And then they come back and they're like, what else is like this? Like, this was really good. I enjoyed this. And that's the best feeling. So whether we're catering to people who, like me, were little and saw a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon and were like, oh my gosh, they have books and these books are for me and they look like the thing that I saw on TV. And we're at a point now where a dad or another parental or figure in their life, a guardian in their life, is like, yeah, well, when I was a kid, the movies were coming out, or I remember when they were black and white and very violent. Like the history of these things and how they change and how they become a part of our culture is super interesting. One of our highest rotating sections are comic books that are cooking books.
Really?
That do step by step on how to make your own ramen. It makes all the sense in the world, right? Like to have an illustrated guide.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
Food.
Wait a minute. Especially for children or college kids that have never had to cook for themselves. Wait, that's so smart.
It is so smart. It's a great little niche area of where comics are really thriving. And for a lot of parents, I know because I am one, sometimes you get kids that are advanced readers that you might struggle finding appropriate content for them to be engaged with because, oh, yeah, they understand all the vocabulary in this book, but there's situations that you may not be ready to have discussions about, or they may not be prepared to internalize that in the way that you do when you're reading. Our nonfiction, middle grades, and early readers section constantly turns over. We have comics on how to fix a car that are written for fifth graders.
I love it.
And I want to see that fifth grader out there with the hood open, going through mom and dad's car, trying to take things apart. I mean, I accept no responsibility for what your child did after they left the store. But I love stuff like that. How to design your own board game, told as a comic book. How to, what the situation was around, tribal relocation as a nonfiction story that is told appropriately for their age through comics. And that's the accelerated reader. That's where you get them to really start getting deep and invested in things in a way that is more appropriate for them and still engaging. So that's kind of the origin story of the store, was really that idea of how do we not only cater to the folks who want, early issues of Captain America, who want to read about current indie, small press, monthly books, those are stories that are maybe interesting to them. How do you appreciate the fine art side of it? And how do you create a home where somebody can come in and not feel pressure, not feel like it's an incomprehensible diagram of webs to get through? Everything in here is racked by genre. It's super easy just to be like, oh, well, what kind of TV shows or movies do you like? I don't want to know what your favorite comic is. I mean, tell me what your favorite comic is, but if you're coming to find something new, I don't need to know that you really liked the Spider-Man movie. I mean, that's cool. I mean, great. We have books about that they base those movies off of, but I'm way more interested in you being like, well, I liked the science aspect of that, like the sci-fi, weird, kind of kitschy, got bit by a spider and now he can climb on walls. We got you, friend. Like, and it's going to be take you down a rabbit hole that's really, really fun and interesting. And I find it extremely inspiring as someone who obviously, went to school for fine art, have a lot of friends who are painters and ceramicists and live in that world. The ability to combine not just one image, but 20 or more collections of images, and it also tell a story and be narrative and be engaging. It's a really, really unique, specific set of skills. And I think that it is something I'm just honored to have any kind of part in, whether it's connecting people with a book, connecting people with an artist, connecting artists with themselves. I don't think comics need to be elevated. I think that they already have enough cachet to do that. I think it's just about exposure in this country. When you travel to Japan, every train station is filled with comic books, and there are grandmas reading comic books on the train. And they have their stories, they have their ones that they follow, and they have their sweet romance books, or they have their historical books, or whatever it may be. They're super weird, kinky, whatever books. Like, they're there in the train station, in the bookstore that's right there. You go to France, all the comics are oversized hardcover albums, and they're treated like the finest editions of books, those Tintin editions that you can still get, or new books like Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, that are given these beautiful treatments and really elevated beyond what most, I feel like, Americans say a comic book, which is true. That $4, $5 paper stock staples is a different thing, and that's just not all encompassing of what it is.
This store is a lot more than just little superhero comics. This is very, very cool.
Which I do love my superhero comics.
I do love. I don't mean to.
I know. I always do the same thing. It's always a balance of this is what historically has been popular.
Yeah.
And this is the breadth of what it is.
I don't think I was ready for so much cool stuff in here, or so many cool programs for artists.
Yeah.
Lee, I mean, what a cool place.
Thank you. Well, the only reason we get to do it is because people support it. And that's the same with all of our our small businesses, our retail, our arts organizations, our restaurants. None of that keeps going if we don't have people who show up for it. And so I think that's whenever I get a nice compliment, which I do always appreciate, the response is, it is a neighborhood that builds this. This isn't just, we were in a position to be able to help facilitate financially or whatever to get it off the ground, but it doesn't keep going if we don't have a community to support both ways. So it's been one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done is to have a part in the store.
You've done just a beautiful job. What a cool place. What a cool guy.
I'm very old.
Stop.
But, and the other thing I'm really quick to point out is I'm never here. The staff that we have is incredible. And it's a small team. It's only 4 people. And some of our booksellers one of our booksellers has been here since we opened 7 years ago. And but everybody, we have one newer hire, that's within the last year, but everybody else is 3, 4, 5 years. And so in retail, that's not super common.
No, that's only common because you're closer to an art gallery than retail.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think that there is a real investment from folks that I wish I told you we had the highest pay in town. I wish we told you that we had amazing perks. We don't. It really is that we have people who work here who care and are very conscientious about what our reputation might be or how we present to people. And they want to make sure that if you come in every week, every Wednesday, or if you've never been in a comic shop before in your life, that you feel like you were special, that you made a difference, because they do. We pay our rent $4 at a time, and that's a lot of small transactions to take care of everything. And it wouldn't be possible if people didn't come in the doors to allow us to do it. The other things I'll kind of mention, so we have SAVAGE Fest that happens in October.
I'll come back for the October one.
Well, awesome. Because this summer we really have kind of scaled back a little bit because we had a really busy spring. There were a couple of weeks in May where we had large events every week, and that was really taxing. It was really, really hard to get through that. Luckily, again, great support team. We had a bunch of volunteers that came out to help with a lot of that. So that would have been Free Comic Book Day, which is always the first Saturday in May every year. You may compare it to something like Record Store Day, where Record Store Day has exclusive releases and things like that. The big difference is Record Store Day isn't free for people to come and get records. That would be crazy. But Free Comic Book Day, we pay for the books, but they are free to our visitors. Cool. And it's a great outreach opportunity. We had horrible rain this year, but we still had a line outside for 6 hours.
Whoa.
And we put out tents outside and tried to do our best. And I'm very thankful for everybody who comes out and supports that every year. We also worked with Ships of the Sea Maritime Museum. They have an exhibit right now called Drawn to the Sea, which is they commissioned comic stories from 4 different comic artists to tell stories of ships that are represented in their collection. So we partnered with them not only to help promote the exhibit, but to actually publish the catalog, which is going to be right up there. And so the catalog is the work that's in the show, which is very cool. And we put on an event in their space called Comic Currents, which was a comic convention of around 30 regional cartoonists who came and set up and talked about their work and met people. And it was a very interesting venue to do that in. Very kind of, I love more subversive things. Like you might know, of course, if you're going to a comic book convention, you may have an expectation of what that's going to be. But if you happen to be going to Ships of the Sea on a free museum Sunday and you find this, that's very powerful. That really does reach people that are outside of our normal spheres. And then the SAVAGE Zine Fest, which happens in October of every year, we work with Two Tides. So we close DeSoto Avenue, that private street right there. And that's really guerrilla. That is putting comic books on the street when people are there for a bright and sunny October Saturday to blanket the whole street with people that are self-publishing weird, cool, indie, lo-fi comic books, zines, graphic novels that they are often telling really unique, interesting personal stories, or they're being esoteric and focusing on their niche interests. And the connections that are made there are so exciting because it is a surprise. And when you have somebody who just is in town and came because they heard it was a good brewery, or we're going to take the family to eat at Sterling Yard, they're like, what's this? And they end up leaving with 10 little books from independent creators. It's a huge impact for those artists and creators that are there tabling, contributing to their bottom line, but hopefully for the people who picked up the books and are sharing them and are, when they're done with them, giving them to somebody else and keeping that story going from person to person. So that's been a really, really great relationship that we've had with SAVAGE Fest as well. Super fun people.
You have very cool programming. You have a very cool store. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. I can do this for like hours, by the way.
I am I'm ready to come back for October. Like, this is the coolest place. I hate that I have to go pick my toddler up from pre-pre. I'm so sorry.
You shouldn't hate that.
Well, no, okay. That's not what
this is on the record. I would like to say that Kate does not want to go and get their child.
I would prefer to be shopping with you.
Oh, sweet.
Thank you so much for having me.
It was a pleasure. Thanks for letting me ramble, because I can certainly do it.
You did great.
Yeah.
This was so cool.
And everybody come check out Ace. They'll be here throughout the month of June.
Thanks again to Lee. It was so much fun to go through the shop and learn more about comic book art. I am sure we will have more chats with him as we get closer to the Comic Book Fest in the fall. Hope to see you next week, Savannah.